Good morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with Cambium Networks. Today's host is Bruce Collins, Director, Product Management. He'll be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to submit them in the question box, and Bruce will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Bruce, I'm finished for now. Thank you very much for joining us and being our host. You can go ahead. The floor is now yours.
Okay, great. Thanks, Julie, and thanks everybody for joining. Today I'm going to be giving a discussion around Cambium Networks and how we play in the industrial Internet of Things ecosystem or market. And I'll talk specifically about some of the products. The presentation is probably 20-25 minutes, and then we will certainly have plenty of time for questions. So if you have questions, go ahead and you can ask them, and we'll take those at the end. So some of you might not be familiar with Cambium Networks. I wanted to put this up quickly. Cambium Networks is a supplier of point-to-point, point-to-multipoint solutions, all based on wireless. We talk about connecting the unconnected, whether it's people, places, and things, and we do connectivity from short-range connections all the way to very long-range connections. We've been around for about 6 years after coming out of Motorola Solutions. I'm here at our headquarters in Chicago, Illinois, or just outside of Chicago, and one of about 550 employees across the world. So enough about that. I wanted to talk a bit about industrial Internet of Things, and you'll hear a lot about IIoT in the press and in different websites and as you go to different shows and that sort of thing. And one of the things that we realize is that we've been delivering products and solutions to industrial customers and large-scale enterprise customers for a long time and across many products. So as a director of product management, one of my responsibilities is to look across the different products that we have in the portfolio and how do those particularly fit into in an IIoT solution or portfolio. So I'm going to focus most of the talk today on our CNReach, which is our SCADA process control solution, but I wanted to at least touch on some of the other products as well. So if you start over here on the left, you'll see our PTP-820, which is a licensed microwave solution. This is quite useful for delivering multiple gigabits per second of data to large areas. We have our sub-6 gigahertz products, which is our PTP-670 and PTP-450i. Those are available in multiple bands and deliver hundreds of megabits per second. And then as you continue to the right, you'll see we have a 450i product, which is excellent for access and video surveillance. And we recently, probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago, introduced our CN Pilot product. We have some outdoor access points in the CN Pilot line, which are very well suited for this, industrial applications. And then, like I mentioned, we'll talk about CNReach in some more detail. What really ties all these together is our Link Planner planning tool, and then CN Maestro, which is our network. When we talk about CNReach and in meeting industrial organizations' goals and requirements, we're really looking at these areas. And I'd probably take a step back and talk about what do we mean by an industrial vertical. And we're really focused on the outdoor industrial verticals. So if you need to connect a large number of devices over a wide area and provide connectivity from the sensors at say an oil well or an electric utility substation, or it might be a transportation, smart transportation, whether it's on the rail side or the roadway side, to provide connectivity to those sensors. And then certainly water and wastewater management is another key area for those. But what kind of ties all them together is that they have large numbers of devices that they want to connect back to a central point for processing and analysis, and do that confidently and confidentially, so securely and reliably. When we're talking to customers, we kind of see their objectives breaking down into these 4 areas. Oftentimes, it's just a matter of trying to provide that communications infrastructure to support the new IIoT initiatives. So some organizations are just looking to connect more things to their analytics and to their process control. So they want more connectivity and higher capacity connectivity, meaning they want to not only measure or monitor a location more regularly or more often, but each time they monitor it, they want to collect more information. Certainly reducing outages in these networks and increasing the availability, whether you're offering a water supply or oil and gas, or you're delivering services in a transportation area, you need to focus on availability. We talk about reducing operational costs and truck rolls. So really, the business case oftentimes can come down to, now that I have this infrastructure in place, what is the cost to support that infrastructure? And then finally, a growing area, constantly have this concern about the safety and security of personnel. And then a growing area is the security or cybersecurity of devices, and making sure that the network itself is secure from a malicious attack or any kind of hacking risk. So those are kind of the key high-level objectives. When we look at a high-level model of IIoT, it kind of can put most companies and products into this model. When you start over there on the left and you think about data acquisition, this is really, think of anything that you want to turn from a physical parameter like temperature or pressure or a water level, or you want to know if a machine is turned on or turned off. That's kind of that data acquisition level. So that's kind of the sensors that are deployed out into the world and converting that physical parameter into a voltage or a current that can then be packetized and sent over a data network. And that data network is the transport layer, and that's really where Cambium focuses on. Once that information is transported across the network, you'll want to normalize it and publish it. That can sometimes be through a SCADA master, or it could be through some of the new IoT standards. And then ultimately, you're feeding that into analysis and decision making. From Cambium's perspective, we are very much focused on the transport piece. And we're not tied necessarily to one technology, as you can see in this list. We have products in broadband, licensed microwave. We have products in the narrowband space, both licensed and unlicensed. And certainly, as you see that list continue to grow, Cambium will continue to expand our offerings to make sure that we're offering really a set of Lego blocks or opportunities or options to convert sensors and transport that data across the network. But today we're really going to talk about the narrowband See and Reach product. So some of you may be familiar with the term SCADA or SCADA solutions. It's supervisory control and data acquisition. It's a technology that's been around for quite a while to collect machine-to-machine data and bring it back for analysis. See and Reach is our product that's very well suited for SCADA process control and monitoring. And when we set about to launch this product coming up on about a year ago, we looked at what are the key parameters for this product. And this kind of summarizes the deployment flexibility is a key place. And I'll show you a slide on this, but it's really, can I take the same radio and solve lots of different problems with that radio? So can I do point-to-point, point-to-multipoint? We have some built-in general purpose I/O, which I'll talk about. And then from a flexibility standpoint, we can offer this radio in several different pieces of spectrum. Now here in the US, that's primarily going to be in these bands that I've listed here. We have a 900 megahertz band, which is unlicensed. You can also get a license for 900 megahertz, and the radio supports both. Some oil and gas and utility companies have a 700 megahertz license, and that's certainly an option for some customers here in the U.S. And then there's a significant number of deployments in this 400 megahertz band and 220 megahertz band. So when you're evaluating your needs and looking at what kind of connectivity you need, you've got a lot of options on spectrum. Some of these are licensed that you have exclusive access to, and some of them, like the 900 megahertz ISM, it's not exclusive. You can just go and access and use that spectrum.
Excuse me, Bruce, can I interrupt for a quick second?
Sure.
Is it possible, can you remove the panel that is showing on your screen?
Did that help?
Go to meeting. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So the other areas are, we really look at reliability. So each of these radios is 100% tested at the factory. We support some of the hazardous environments. And low power consumption is important in some of these cases where if you're doing, say, digital signage application, or if you're doing an oil and gas application, being able to run off solar power or batteries becomes important. So low power consumption. And then, as with all of our Cambium solutions, we're focusing on how do I scale this up to a large network by using and reusing that scarce spectrum, making sure the product is secure and then manageable. So I'll go into some of this in a little more detail. This picture kind of gives an example of how you could deploy a CNReach network. It can support both point-to-point or point-to-multipoint. And then I wanted to also highlight in the middle of the screen, you'll see two kinds of repeaters, a store and forward repeater and a back-to-back repeater. And these repeaters are useful if you're going to deliver data or transport data into a very remote area that you might not have direct connectivity to, but you can certainly chain or daisy chain these together in a relay mode, in a relay fashion to cover very long distances. So some of the users, and I'll show you a couple examples here of deployments, but certainly the users I mentioned are the oil fields, electric utilities, any kind of pipeline, whether it's water or some kind of petrochemical. Signage control, we have customers in around the world, both in Latin America as well as Australia, here in the US, doing digital signage. So if I have a sign that I can't access using the traditional cellular network, I can push the data out there using a private network using CNReach out to those digital signs. Flood management, that seems to be quite important these days, reading in the news. We have a customer in Colombia that is monitoring all different floodplains and looking at water levels so they can dispatch and recommend and monitor the flood stages as different storms come and go. A lot of cities, municipalities are using the product for their city-owned water utilities or city-owned alarming for fire control panels, that sort of thing. And then the rail industry is a big customer of ours, and they're using that for trackside automation, positive train control, and understanding and delivering connectivity into very remote areas. In some cases, that even includes voice applications into very remote areas. Here's a kind of a real-world example of showing how a water utility in Ohio is using the product for monitoring the lift stations and reservoirs in their water management system. They were using a legacy 900 megahertz serial-only network that had been deployed for probably, I think it was out there for about 10 or 15 years. And they were looking at upgrading that to do two things. One is to move to a licensed spectrum. So they wanted to move away from unlicensed 900 to a licensed 900. They had experienced some interference in some areas of their network. And CNReach allowed them to migrate in a step-by-step fashion because CNReach supports both licensed and unlicensed. They also wanted to migrate to TCP/IP so they can use some of the traditional or modern management capabilities, some modern remote terminal units or programmable logic controllers that are Ethernet or IP based. And they wanted to be able to manage these radios from a central location. So certainly TCP/IP helps with that as well. So we worked with one of our channel partners, and we deployed this network. You can see a little snippet of our link planner software in the lower left. That gives you a sense of the scale of this network. I think it's about 30, 35 radios today, and it's going to grow to just over 300 as they continue to expand out this network. So it's an example in the water treatment area. The next example is in an oil and gas space. This is connecting to, you can see a traditional pump jack in an oil field. And on that pump jack, there will be a number of sensors looking at temperature, pressure, the flow of the product. And all of that information is fed to this remote terminal unit that you see in the middle. Inside or behind the door of that remote terminal unit is a CNReach radio that then connects to a Yagi antenna and delivers that over the air back to the SCADA master. And the SCADA master then is able to monitor the amount of oil that's pumped off the field. It's able to do preventative maintenance on that pump jack and understand if there's an issue or an outage or something that needs to be done to make sure that continues to operate in an efficient manner. Here's another example of a wastewater treatment. This is, again, a lift station. And the thing to point out here is, again, it's a CNReach radio talking kind of up over that hill in Colorado and delivering that connectivity in a non-line of sight environment. So you can connect these radios in areas that are very difficult to reach. And then speaking of that, here's a kind of a worst case scenario. This is a radio on a mountaintop in northwest Canada, just on the Canadian side of the border with Alaska. And they're using this CNReach radio for what's called a ROIP, or radio over IP solution. And they wanted to deliver voice connectivity down into a very remote, hard to reach area. And you can see that the need for the ruggedized product here becomes a very difficult place to service equipment. So you want to go out there and put it out there and never have to touch it other than connecting to it remotely to manage it. Here's another example. This is actually in our near our lab here outside of Chicago, and it's showing the propagation of our 220 megahertz solution. So when you talk about wireless technology, the propagation and capacity are oftentimes the key trade-offs that you're making. With CNReach, we're typically what's called below 1 gigahertz. So the propagation of the signals works quite well. This is an example of a 220 megahertz radio, and it's propagating about 1.5 miles through very dense foliage. You can see our test vehicle over there on the right. This is just an example of how the lower frequency and the propagation is very effective at 220 megahertz. Now you're going to trade that off by having less capacity, but in many machine-to-machine applications, that lower capacity is certainly adequate. The radio itself provides lots of different connectivity, because as you have to interface to these different machines, and oftentimes legacy systems all the way to the modern IP-based systems, we have several different ways of interfacing to those devices. So there's 2 serial ports on the radio here. There's 2 Ethernet ports that look pretty much just like any TCP/IP. Will receive any kind of TCP/IP traffic, whether you want to set it up as a terminal server or a terminal client, or just pass traditional TCP/IP traffic. And then on that green connector on the left, you'll see is a optional 8-port general purpose I/O. So some customers use this to connect directly to a sensor. So I could connect, for example, a very common scenario is to connect this to the door panel on the front where the CNReach radio resides. And now the network operator knows when somebody has access to that radio or access to that cabinet. So I can tie different kinds of alerts or alarms or sensors right into the radio. And I won't go through all of this in detail, but this is an example of how that interfacing works. And you can kind of see the example in the middle. If I ever want to just monitor a switch, whether that might be the door opening and closing, or if I want to turn on a motor or turn off a motor, I can do that with the general purpose I/O that's built into CNReach. We also, I mentioned before, we have a link planner tool. So one of the I guess steps in deploying a radio network is understanding what kind of capacity can I achieve from point A to point B? What kind of availability can I achieve? So how reliable is that connection going to be? So our link planner tool makes all that planning very easy. And basically you start out with link planner by saying, I want to connect point A to point B, and I can use Google Maps. I can use latitude and longitude coordinates. And link planner will then populate based on its database that view right there in the middle, that path profile view, and it'll show you what the terrain looks like between point A and point B. And from there, you can start to do a bunch of what-if scenarios. You can choose different frequency bands. If you choose a frequency band, say 450 megahertz, then you can select the CNReach radio, and constantly it will update what throughput and availability can be achieved with that technology and over that distance. You can then do things like adjust the antenna size. If I want to go to a larger antenna, or if I want to move that antenna higher up on a post or on a mast, I can see the impact of all those changes in real time. And then once you're satisfied with the design, you can create a proposal report, or you can directly output an installation report to say, here's exactly what the plan is, including a list of materials that's needed and exactly where to mount the antenna and where to point or align the radio. So very powerful tool. We generally do, we've already done more than 1 million path profiles this year. So it's a very popular tool used by our customers all over the world. The other piece of software that I'll mention briefly is CN Maestro. This is our end-to-end management solution. And this is, again, a solution that, much like Link Planner, is applicable across multiple products within the Cambium portfolio. So if you're using CN Maestro, you can manage the CN Pilot Wi-Fi access points. You can manage point-to-multipoint radios. And now you can also manage the CNReach or the SCADA process control radios. And it works in very similar fashion, regardless of the radio technology that you're using. You get a nice dashboard that shows exactly where does the radio I'm interested in fit within the hierarchy. It'll show a physical map of where it's at, the status, how much capacity is it consuming. And then you can do some diagnostics as well. You can drill down into the radio, see what's happening over time with some performance graphs. And you can also do some interactive diagnostics like running throughput tests and connectivity checks between the radios. One of the things that's unique about CN Maestro is that well, for one thing, it's available both in a cloud-based architecture as well as a on-premises-based architecture, which means you can have Cambium hosted on our large scale cloud-based system, which has tens of thousands of devices under management. Or if you're more comfortable, you can put a server in your own server farm and manage a local on-premises version. One of the key differences is that each radio that's under management is running a CN Maestro device agent. And that device agent is connecting out to CN Maestro. And that's different from a traditional SNMP approach of having to connect from the management system down to the radio, where I have to puncture that firewall. In this case, the communication is starting from the radio and coming back up. So you get a nice secure environment, and it's also the radio itself is only sending information that's useful or determined to be have changed over time. So you kind of allow some of the processing to occur at the node rather than have all that done back at the central network server. And one of the things that we do with this is we're able to push security policies. So, for example, one of the things many of our customers ask us about is, can I change the passwords on all my radios from a remote point? And certainly that's something that you can do with CNReach and CNMaestro, is I can say, every 30 days, I want to update the password. I go in, select the radios, put the new password in, hit go to start the process, and all that work is done. And in many cases, that's a very manual task in existing systems that can take a long time. So that is a real quick overview of Cambium's IIoT portfolio and some specific details on CNReach. I think, Julie, if there's any questions, I could take those now. You can kind of, read through this slide. It kind of shows what are some of the unique things. I think I covered them in the presentation, but certainly if you have questions about any of the details, we could go into that now.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Bruce. And yes, I do have some questions. Appreciate that presentation. We've all enjoyed it. Let me go ahead and get started. I have the first question right here for you. Does Cambium have any planned meet and greets coming up soon for an opportunity, for example, for Microcom sales employees to come and talk with Cambium users directly?
So there are some opportunities for that. Certainly, we are in the process of offering a number of training sessions, and some of those are free training. I know that we're offering a number of CNReach training courses in around the U.S. I know there's some coming up in Southern California and in Phoenix. There's also Texas. If you go to our CambiumNetworks.com website and look under training, you'll see a whole list of free training opportunities. Another area that is a possibility to interact, it's more in a virtual sense, is on our community forum. That's our online forum where we have, again, I think we're up over 12 or 13,000 different users on that forum that people ask questions. So you can kind of learn about what questions people have and what, and you can start to engage with some customers there. And then I also look at the website for the different shows that we're presenting at and having exhibits at. That's another opportunity to to meet some customers hand in hand with Cambium.
Thank you very much, Bruce. That answers several questions, but I do have some more for you. Is there any more studies on how the monitor of the storms and floods with the CNReach?
We do have a case study for we have a written case study for that application I described, which is the water and wastewater treatment application. For the flood management, we're actually in process of doing a case study on that. The savings there, at least at one aspect of the business case, is to understand when the pumps are working and when the pumps are not working. And in a traditional sense, that actually required people to drive out to the location and watch for a light or a signal at that pump to see if that pump station was operational or not. And by automating that, they could reroute those trucks and focus the trucks on just the locations that were having outages, rather than have to do a proactive drive around and look for those outages. So it sounds pretty archaic that people are still doing that driving around looking for the flashing light, but that's the opportunity, is really to automate that.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I've got another question here for you. Is Cambium in prisons at all? Evidently, there's a huge wireless presence in the prison system, and we're just curious if Cambium is or has approached that territory.
Oh, that's a great question. That's a vertical I have not come across before. Other than so yeah, I have to say I don't know. That's something I'll have to take and look at. I know that there's certainly a very large application for Cambium's equipment is video surveillance. We do a large number of video surveillance applications that are used in all different kinds of security. So whether it's for but I just don't know if that's being used in a prison security application, but certainly the radios would be very well suited for that.
Thank you. Yes, interesting question. I agree. Next question. Since you are in the oil industry, have you worked on non-spark devices for cameras and all respected equipment needed to run the camera but stay under protocols on site? On oil fields?
Yeah, so we have multiple products that are what's called ATEX HAZLOC certified. So that means that they can operate in a explosive environment. We're typically, if I'm not sure if the person asking the question is into all the details, but we comply with what's called Class 1 Div 2, and that's both our point-to-multipoint 450i product, our PTP 670 product, and also our See and Reach product comply with those standards. So that basically means you can deploy the product in in certain environments, and it's called intrinsically safe. But we don't actually supply the cameras, but you could certainly interface one of those compliant radios with a compliant radio and make this the whole solution. That would work.
Thank you very much. Next question for you. You mentioned that the community forum, is it free to all users?
Yeah, that's very good question. So the community forum is at community.cambiumnetworks.com. So anybody can join that. We have all of our product line managers on that site. We have many of our development engineers. So it's a great resource to ask those questions that may not be, maybe just a real narrow question that you just want to know about an application or something. You can always post that up there, and somebody will get back to it real quick. And the word free prompts me to mention that link planner software. I don't think I said that, but that link planner tool is also available for anyone to download and use for their planning and what if scenario. And then similarly, See and Maestro for up to most size networks. I think it's 2,500 devices or something. You can use See and Maestro at no charge, so you can deploy that and start to take some advantage, or even if you just want to play around with it and test it a little bit, you can get started with any of those software tools at no charge.
Thank you very much. Next question. Can you tell us where the equipment is manufactured? Is it local to the U.S.?
We have factories in multiple locations. We have the See and Reach radios are manufactured here in the U.S. We have radios that are manufactured in Mexico, and then we have some manufacturing on some of our lower cost platforms in China. So these products are deployed globally. So we have kind of different manufacturing strategies for different products as we kind of go around the world.
Thank you very much. Next question. Does Cambium offer support? And if so, what are the hours of operation? And do we need a partner ID to discuss with a representative or anything like that?
So we definitely have support that's available. We have a support center that are staffed 24/7, so you can call or email to these support centers. We offer a standard 1-year warranty on all of our hardware, and then you can purchase additional extended warranties, typically out to 5 years, and that would cover the ability to request technical support. There is some multiple what's called Cambium Care offerings that are available. So you can, depending on if you want full 24/7 or if you want just normal business hours access to an actual human, there's different levels of that. But basic technical support is included with the standard hardware warranty.
Thank you for that, Bruce. I've got one last comment here. That photo that you showed that looks like it's at the top of the world is extremely beautiful. Comment here is make sure you put that on your social media profile.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thanks for the feedback.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that is an amazing picture. Yeah. Yeah, that was sent in from one of our customers up in Canada that you mentioned.
It's very beautiful. Anyway, Bruce, thank you so much for answering those questions, and thank you to everyone for attending today's webinar. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. Please remember this webinar presentation has been recorded and it will be uploaded to our Microcom YouTube channel so it can be viewed again on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, today. Thank you, Bruce Collins, for your time and your presentation. Appreciated it very much. Everyone have a fantastic day.